we requested a chance to be heard in relation to the approval of this odious agreement, because believe it or not, under the flawed Fair Work Act, unions in our situation where we're going to cover the workforce, they fall under our coverage. We are the Prison Officers Union, it is a prison, it will be employing prison officers, that was not in doubt, but unions don't get an automatic right to be heard in these matters. In fact, the Fair Work Act is a little bit iffy on this. So we wrote to them requesting to be heard. Thankfully, the Fair Work Commission's ineptitude helped us in our bid to be heard, because they responded and said, we have received your request. And then a week later they wrote to me and said, we've approved the agreement. So, we can't hear you can't be heard now because we're a bit of an oversight. Sorry, oops, our bad. We've gone ahead and approved that agreement, which actually gave us grounds for appeal, because there was an admin error that they caused, which meant, well, if it was arguable whether we could be heard previously, we now have grounds for appeal because they stuffed up. So we fought the agreement at Fair Work. United Voice on the other side of the country, because it was a national agreement, also got wind of this odious agreement, even though Sodexo doesn't have a presence anywhere else in the country at the moment in terms of prisons, because they're a catering company, a French catering company, so clearly the best choice to run a prison in Perth. So we teamed up with UV, we enlisted the aid of Slater and Gordon locally, and we mounted an argument as to why this agreement should not have been approved. Our argument that, it was negotiated with 8 people who weren't prison officers in a room in Balcatta for the whole country wasn't good enough. That's actually not an argument that Fair Work was willing to recognise. The only argument we had left was this agreement is not as good as the award. We fought that argument for a long time. Sodexo lawyered up. I'm pretty sure they had lawyers help draft the agreement in the first place. This is a business model for these companies, as we learnt at NextGen. And ultimately, the agreement was approved with 9 undertakings, not the least of which was that clause 23, the site-specific allowance was given a minimum value that couldn't be taken away at the discretion of the employer. So from memory, I think $6,500 per annum was the minimum value, and that was to make up for all of the clauses that were still worse than the award. Some of the things in this agreement were odious. We had rosters when the prison actually opened in December, and we were fighting in Fair Work over the paying conditions, the agreement, or the award while the agreement was put to the side. They had officers working 7 consecutive night shifts. They had officers rostered to work 10 days in a row. They had officers coming in, sometimes for quite some distances, we all know how big Perth is, for shifts of 4 to 5 hours in length, which sort of screws your day up if you're trying to live a life and you've got to go to work for 4 hours to, as part of your 10 days in a row. There's this absurd situation because they're basically being paid the award rate plus the site allowance. The site allowance is only payable on your rostered shifts. It's not payable when you agree to do overtime, and there's always overtime available at Sodexo because they haven't got enough staff, which is the private sector model to run prisons. So when you do an overtime shift, you revert back to the award rate plus the applicable penalties. And when the award rate is half of what you're normally getting paid, you need to work on a Sunday to get double time to get paid what you'd normally get paid on your rostered shift. If you can sort of wrap your head around that, you get paid effectively less on your overtime shifts than you do on your normal shifts. Now, we all know overtime is an incentive provided by the employer for an employee to put in a few extra hours. What's the incentive to do overtime when you're going to be paid less than you would on your normal shifts? But this is the absurdity of the business model that Sodexo has adopted that is allowed under the current Fair Work Act. Yeah, it's better than the award. The award's shit, let's be honest. For most industries, the award is shit. It's supposed to be a safety net. The safety net's sitting on concrete. If you fall to the safety net, you get hurt. Some of the other things that Sodexo have done, and bear in mind they haven't been running this rock show for a year, coming up to December. They've exploited other loopholes in the Broken Fair Work Act. They've dismissed people for no reason. One of my favourites was the bald man who didn't wear a hairnet in the kitchen. Was dismissed without warning, walked off site. These were union members, and this was abhorrent. We've had, since December, I think a dozen or so, people walked off site with no notice. But they're allowed to do it under the Fair Work Act, because unless you've been employed for 6 months, you don't have a right to apply for unfair dismissal, no matter how unfair that dismissal was. It's their business model. What they've been doing, I'm going out in 2 weeks' time to do an induction with their 5th class of prison officers. Less than 12 months they've been running this prison. Their 5th class, each class is about 20 odd prison officers. They had 2 classes at the start. Their total complement of prison officers is around 75. So they're on to their 5th. Every time a new class is coming on board, they don't want to run with 76 officers. They only want to pay for 75. I am convinced they've got a list of the 75 officers in order of who they like and who they don't like at the bottom. Usually the union activists are at the bottom. Because every time a class is coming on, disciplinaries appear. People get walked off site if they've been there for less than 6 months. So each new class is regeneration. Let's get rid of the deadwood. Luckily, they have slipped up a couple of times. They tried to get rid of a very experienced officer, union member, who had been there for 6 months, thankfully. But he was a union member and we represented him through a disciplinary process. It was very clear that they wanted to dismiss him. I made it very clear that they were going to have problems if they did, and he's kept his job. I've got another one currently that lost her job for lateness, inappropriate uniform and not following instructions. No detail was provided on any of those allegations. No process was held. She was invited to a meeting to discuss lateness, inappropriate uniform and not following instructions. When she arrived at the meeting, there was an envelope on the table. Open the envelope and read what's in it. You're being terminated effective immediately for lateness, inappropriate uniform, not following instructions. We will win that unfair dismissal case. She's been there for 6 months. I've got no doubt. Fair work is shit, but it's not that shit. She will be offered a job back. She doesn't want it back. We're hoping that we get some compensation for it. But this is the business model that multinationals like Sodexo, like Chevron, like Serco are using and empowered to use, and their lawyers are telling them how to use. This is why we need to change the rules. The rules are shit. It's not enough to be right anymore. It's not enough to go, that's not fair. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter with the current Fair Work Act. Which is why we sort of landed on change the rules for tonight's subject. Because on the back of wage theft, which we spoke about when we were last in this room, that too is a business model. This is not companies forgetting to pay penalty rates and wage, the award rate or the agreed rate or superannuation in a lot of cases. This is a business model. This is a business model for Sodexo. Their business model was keep the union out and we'll be able to exploit the workers. They clearly didn't do their research before they came to WA. We still have about 80% density in that prison. The delegate has stood down. We don't have a delegate because he was being mercilessly targeted. 2 of my better activists and informants have retained their union membership, but I don't hear from them anymore. They've been promoted. They got promotions in exchange for speaking to Paul from the union. These are all the tactics that these companies are using and are allowed to use and are getting away with because of the broken Fair Work Act. So yes, I went to Next Gen. I listened to the stories about why the rules are broken and need changing, and that's why I thought I'd share the story of Sodexo and our members with you guys tonight, because it was the stories that got me on board. It's, it's one thing to come out with a great three-word slogan, change the rules, but when you hear why those rules are broken and absolutely need changing, that's when you start thinking, yeah, what can I do? What can I do to help this movement? And I think I mentioned last time from the floor, it's not enough now to join your union or get active within your union or sort of make a stand in your workplace. You need to encourage your union to interact with the umbrella organisations such as Unions WA and ACTU and get behind St Sally because